Hey guys, we are back with another episode of Black Parents Aging. It's Olivia here today. I don't have Nicola, but I do have two very special guests, and I'm really excited to have them and for the conversation that we're going to have because I have been getting a lot of questions and a lot of side conversations from friends and colleagues about this topic. And so I wanted to talk to two people that know about this intimately and are close in age. I think we're pretty around, we're around the same age that is dealing with this. And so I am welcoming Ciarra Joyner and Maya Miller to the podcast. Welcome, guys. Or
Hey.
should I say ladies? Welcome, ladies. I know these two lovely ladies personally. So what I want is for us to just have a conversation. And I think for those of you listening, you're going to get some tidbits and probably be able to relate to a lot of what these ladies are going to say and have to share. And so let's get right into it. Ciarra, let's start with you. If you can just introduce yourself, tell everyone a little bit about you.
Hello, Ciarra Joyner, she, her. I live in Durham, North Carolina. I work full-time at an HBCU where I'm a Title IX coordinator. And I live and care for both my parents. My father he'll be 75 in December, and my mother is 74. She fancies herself young because she's 1 year younger than dad. Dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2020, 2021, when we noticed some decline. My sister and I my sister does not live with us. She did, and then she left me. We always talk about how my dad, we see he has mental decline, but he's very healthy. He's very active. He rides a bike, very physical. My mom, brain sharp as can be, but she doesn't always as physically active as we want her. So I'd say one of the biggest things is that's one of the largest things I deal with is the differences in the two people. For fun, I volunteer.
Okay.
I work out and meal prep. I do enjoy meal prepping.
That is not fun, but
Meal prepping
okay.
is fun. Okay,
Okay.
I find it, and we'll discuss this. I
Okay.
find it very stressful. Parents are like children; they're always hungry, and I find it
So
very
am I.
stressful. Right, but after a long day at work or weeks, or if I go hang out with someone, not knowing that I have nutritious meals prepared and trying to limit food waste because as people age, they don't eat as much. But we have to watch their cholesterol, their sugar, their glucose, their vitamin D, all the things.
All
So
the things.
I find
Okay.
meal prepping I find it enjoyable.
Okay. Fine. Enjoyable. We'll go with that. Okay. Maya, tell
Right.
us a little bit about you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Maya Miller. I am 33. I am based in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I left corporate America last year and I started my own freelance photography journey. So that does aid in my feasibility to be able to be a caretaker for both of my parents. My dad is 81. He was diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia in 2020. Very similarly, we noticed some, decline to some of his mental cognitive behaviors and things like that. So he ended up retiring. And then a few years later, we got a diagnosis. Mm-hmm. And then my mother, lovely and fresh as she is, she's a fresh 72. And so, yes, but she also has lupus. So a lot of same similarities. She has a lot of lupus fog, brain fog. So they both have some mental cognitive things that they're both over combating. We are in a situation where stress also does inflame her information. So always balancing that as well. But I am their caretaker. I had some siblings who were here, but they have ventured off to do things in their other states as well. So solo dolo, rocking it and taking care of them most of the time. But I enjoy their company, and I'm glad I have the flexibility now to be able to, be there and accessible for doctor's appointments on both ends and everything like that.
Okay, so Both of you said that you are caregivers or caretakers. What is your definition of caretaking and caregiving as it relates to you and your parents?
That's such a good question, because one thing that and I wonder if Maya struggles with this. One thing that my sister and I struggle with is that my mother, because she is healthier, she considers herself the full-time caregiver, but in like on paper,
Right.
but in practice, that's not what happens. I appreciate a lot of things my mom says is that she's like, first off, you're in your major working years, right, of your life. You should still have a life. You should be able to travel and do the things you want to do. And your dad is not your responsibility, right? However, the short of it is we don't really like the way she cares for dad. A lot of times she gets frustrated. I mean, my parents, they just celebrated 50 years of marriage. So 50 years, she's known this man for almost 60, right? 60 years. And she gets frustrated because there's a lot of things that he doesn't listen to that medical professionals tell him. And this has been going on for decades, right?
Yeah.
He was told he had high blood pressure and cholesterol over 20 some odd years ago. And I would call him at work and he would tell me he was eating a Philly cheesesteak. And well, that's not true. He would tell me he was eating cut up chicken on a salad. That's what he would tell me. And then I would call his admin and she would say, we just ordered Philly cheesesteaks and your dad just had French fries and Philly cheesesteaks. So I think for my mom, she gets frustrated. So the way I define it is, though, as a caretaker, caregiver, is that I really do specifically their health. I am the person who monitors all doctor's appointments, all specific caregiving needs, and tries to find the resources behind that. We were letting my mom do it, but like I said, my sister and I just weren't happy with the way she was doing it. So handling that. I'm very lucky. My dad, he still is verbal, he still is active. So my mom can do like the basic day-to-day, but anything outside of that, I'm responsible for, and thinking ahead as well.
Okay, put a pin in that because I'm coming back to something you said. Maya, what about you?
I see it very similarly as well. I feel like there's a very different and dynamic as being a caretaker for a husband versus being a caretaker for a parent.
Yes.
And so seeing him as I've seen him as his daughter throughout his life and this transition as well is very different emotionally for me and my mom as we process this. So some things that she'll be like, today he just is having a rough day, but she's just feeling it a little bit more emotionally versus, just him having a normal day and not maybe recalling what he had for breakfast. So it's being the emotional concept of it, I think, is the variance of it. She does a very good job of just like, managing like the medicine and things. But, sometimes since she does have a little fog, she'll be like, is this the right medicine? We've had many swap ups. Be like, I took his medicine and he took my medicine. It's all of those things.
Oh no. Oh no.
Not they taking each other's medicine.
Yes. She'll like pick up both cups and be like, well, I'm going. I'm just like, okay, now we know, like we're just double checking and making sure we have little different adjustments. He also has vascular dementia. So we're in the phase of like him having issues with maintaining his blood pressure from sitting and standing position and things like that. So a little bit more physical aid I'm able to provide because of her weakness and her strength issues that she has. So just being around, but saying, hey, you want to go outside with your cane versus you want to go outside with your walker, those little aids. But yeah, as far as being a caretaker, she is the main because I allow her. I sleep over sometimes, but she's there as soon as he wakes up and is catering to him in a different way that I personally don't do. So, but I'm here to just assist in the best way that she needs help on those days.
Can you guys talk about, because I noticed this with clients, with my own parents, and it is like a very delicate dance that we need to do. The change in the dynamics, the change in like the power dynamics, the change in like the dynamics of the relationship as like the parent child, and then as your parents age and you're kind of moving into not more of an authoritative role, but just like more of a role in their lives, and like trying to be more curious about what's going on with the doctor, what are you eating, and trying to be more of, I would say, a fixture. How was that transition, and how did you guys kind of navigate that? Because I have a lot of friends that even if their parents may not have any diagnoses, they may still be, you know, healthy, but they're starting to notice differences. And so they're trying to like kind of fill that gap. And parents have not been welcoming for that sort of intrusion in their lives. And so I'm curious how you guys have been able to kind of navigate that changing dynamic.
Um, it's I would say on my end, I think there come stages with everything, noticing things that are different with your parents, noticing how the best way to speak about it so that they'll be able to like really receive and attain the information. At the beginning of my dad's journey, the doctor would say, this is what your diagnosis is. And he's still just like, no, I'm not going to accept that. So with him, we're now in the phase where he's just very welcoming. We like, it's time to take your medicine. There's no pushback. But I think it's going to depend on who your parent is, the best communication style that that can work for them, and trying to realize, they're just people at the end of the day trying to figure out what their one lifestyle is that they have right now, and being able to like always reassure them, like, I'm not here to like try to overstep my boundary. I'm not here to like make you feel as though I'm some parent authoritative person or anything like that. I'm only here to help you have a healthy life and do the best thing that you can to make sure that you're healthy, and we can keep you here as long as possible. So a lot of language was the key to understanding the dynamic on how they will be receptive to the changes that are happening to them from my end.
Maya is so mature.
She isn't she? Because my parents tell me right now, my mom told me the other day in front of my friends, you act like you're the parent. I'm the parent. I had you. And I was like, yes, ma'am. That's not
I think it's interesting to me, Maya, like I hear and I use some of the things that you said. Now I do live with mine. So that means
that's a whole other dynamic.
And I'm very blessed. We have a large home. So there's separation, and I'm able to put them to bed, but I'm still there all the time. Yes, but I find that to be one of the hardest things. And I've noticed it different with the genders of my parents. My mother is a little more, you handle it. Fine. Like, so I do all the medication. I keep up all the prescriptions. I organize all the medications. I do all that. And I appreciate that because it's a little bit more detailed oriented. Like, so I appreciate it. Now, my dad, he is just like, and I am the baby, so I get it. And I really, honestly, in my head, I think he thinks I stopped growing at like 8. There's nothing past 8. He saw my resume like 10 years ago, and he was like, you did all this? It's like, is this you? You were at the commencements, like, I got like, I thought you knew like what I do. And we're actually in similar professions, and similar to your dad, he retired and then we were diagnosed. So I think for him, I just stopped aging at some point. And I never begun. So he really, really fights it. He loves to tell everyone, he says about me, I love to tell people what to do. I do not love to tell people what to do. So it's with him, it's a lot of conflict. I have learned skills and ways to alleviate that conflict, to make it easier, to make it seem like it's his idea, to give him that autonomy. But it's interesting. I was talking to my best friend, and I was just telling her the concerns. She's not dealing with this yet. Her mom's much younger than my parents, and she has 3 sons. She has 3 children. And I was like, like when we get older, because I don't have kids, I was like, your kids they're going to take care of Auntie Cece. I hope they're ready. And she was like, I would never let them take care of me. And I was like, what? Like we're gonna get old. So I think that's some parents, I think, or people start thinking about that. Like, what does my future look like? Obviously, you'll put as many things in place as possible, but you recognize that younger people in your life will be there to support. And I think for a lot of people, my dad, he just thought he was gonna never need the help. I don't know what he thought. I guess there was no plan. There was no plan. And so we experienced a lot of conflict and a
No,
lot
I think
of bossy.
it's generational too.
That's true.
I think our generation is a lot more open to talking about these things. And I think perhaps for our parents' generation, they didn't. Like when I finally told my parents, look, I do estate planning. I can't do this and you not have your estate plans done. Like that's just, we have
How
to
did
do
that
it.
look?
My dad was like long-term care. Like I just figured we would help each other and then we would die and then that would be it. Like the kind of concept and thinking through like what actually happens, what we see happening to other people and families every day. I don't think it registers in the same way for our parents' generation. And
I think generation, but I think you also have to bring up race, right? We know that Black families,
absolutely.
that we're going to keep grandma in the home. I unfortunately both my grandmothers passed before I was born because just that's our word. But my grandfathers were cared for by the siblings. They lived their last days in the home. We have a lot of cousins who oftentimes talk very negatively about care facilities and things. And my sister and I we've already discussed, like if it gets to a point when we need to put mom or dad in a facility, that's what will happen. And but I think in the Black community, it's facility.
Yes, it's taboo.
That means you're throwing them away.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah,
That is what that means.
I'm in that stage right now with my mother. We officially have my father in hospice care, at home hospice care.
Okay.
And they were just, if you have a couple of days where you just maybe want to see what the respite care option is, you could do 2 days over the weekend. And she was just like, I couldn't even imagine that. Like, why would I go and just like let somebody else take care of him when I can take care of him here myself? So those are the things where I'm trying to be like, rest, ease, insurance. And I understand, like, again, it's a very different dynamic as your husband, but as for your own health, you also need some days off to decompress and de-stress and those kind of things like that. So I think it's, especially as a woman, you see yourself as a caretaker, as the nurturer, as the be all end all for the person who you have said that you are going to take care for the rest of their days. But I think just being comfortable with knowing that you can accept help is the biggest thing that, you have to reassure them, like nothing's wrong, because she'll be like, the nurse is coming over, let me mop the floor. I'm like, okay, we can talk about this, but just so you know, we don't have to do this every single time because they're not coming in to judge your home. So I think it's those type of generational things that you
absolutely
work
I think
with.
absolutely
women being expected to carry that load, right? And so as a spouse, but then females, children being expected, and then if you don't have children, you are definitely, like, neither my sister nor I have children, but we always say if we had children, it would be so, if we had spouses and children, this would be so different. A different conversation, a different expectation. And what people, my family, my extended family, what they're like, well, you don't have children, so that's what you
what else you got to do?
What else do
you have no kids? What else you got to do? Yes,
you should be taking care of your parents, right?
Yes.
And then that guilt, right? Like you do feel guilty because people are putting these societal pressures, family pressures, community pressures, right, upon you.
No, yes, and yes to all of that. I think that is I think it's cultural. I think it's hard we're 3 Black women to accept help just in general.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably something that's passed down, like what are the expectation of us. I was talking to someone just about like getting help with their kids, like having someone come in to help or come in to clean the house. And it's just like that says something about me if I can't do all of these things myself. And so I do think it's definitely a shift in mindset to be able to do that. So you're having the respite talk,
Mhm.
Ciarra, emotionally, how do you guys feel about if there comes a time when your parent or parents can't be cared for in home and you have to start looking at long-term care facilities? Have you thought that through? How are you feeling about that? And have you had any like in-depth conversations with your parents about that, the potential of that sometime in the future?
My sister and I have talked about it with the parents. Dad, now this is one place where dad is like, that's fine. Put me in a home. I don't care what you do. We're like, he gets so dramatic. We're like, no one is doing this today. We're just talking about it.
Right.
My mom has made it very clear why we can just stay, we can ride this out to the end. Like, I will be quiet, put me in a corner. She doesn't say not to put her in a home, but she's very clear that that's not her desire. She recognizes, and so she's just like, if you must, right? If it's just not sustainable, then you can. But she very much is like, but I did mention both my grandmothers passed away. So one thing that we've realized is my mom, she never was a caretaker.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad, he has 10 sisters, so he wasn't a caretaker. I mean, he would come mow the lawn, like, but he didn't have to do a lot of this. So we've had to, luckily, a friend that Olivia knows told my sister, like, you have to recognize what they've experienced. Like, they didn't have to do this. So it's easy to say what you want when you weren't put in these predicaments
Positions.
before.
Yes.
But emotionally, it's hard to think about where would they go? Is it a safe space? Would I feel comfortable there with them? I've looked at many, and do we feel comfortable with them? Some are great, some are not. The financial burden on us, on them, right?
What about you, Maya?
Yeah, so with the transition of my dad's progression of his disease, we are in this space because we are with Alzheimer's, your brain is moving and it's shrinking. So we've come a lot of strokes, maybe like 4 or 5 strokes within the past year. So we've done a lot of hospital visits, and the attention that we wanted to focus on is maintaining like his lifestyle, because usually when you go into the hospital, it takes you down. It's a hard thing to bounce back from. So we just wanted to be in a space where we felt comfortable, that we knew that we could have people come and assist us at home. As far as the nurses and the staff, luckily we have like had really good luck with that. Everyone has been nice and friendly and exceptional to making the environment more comfortable for us. In the case of my mom's, just like we were talking about, possibly, he's having issues getting into the bed now. It's a very high bed. So how are we going to transition to that? And she's just like, I would rather have as much medical equipment here at home and to make it still feel like home than having him go somewhere else that he's not going to be familiar with. So I was just like, that's totally fine. And I think it's just making sure that you hear out their concerns and their understanding of it. We're at a space where my dad is, like, again, in a good space where he's more willing to just to go along with everything.
Mm-hmm.
We're very lucky to have that, as far as him like not being too combative about things. But we do have some days where he's still just like, I'm just not feeling it. So you just kind of got to go with the flow. Emotionally, I think it's more so the biggest toll on just knowing that you want to make sure that they just still feel comfortable. I know it's like the overall grandeur of like death that is happening, and living in a space of grief is very overwhelming. And I feel like we're just like constantly in that space for all of that. But I'm just glad that we're able to have good and productive conversations, and just to let them know that, we're here as a family. Like, we'll call in with my sisters and just be like, hey, just so you know, this is what's happening. You might not be here, but this is a stage, and these are like what the days are looking like. So I think emotionally, just trying to be a support system. I was living at home for some time, but I decided, I was just like, this is still just a lot for me. So I just moved down the gym 10 minutes away. So I'm still like a hot skip and a jump, but I had to be able to like remove my space to take care of my mental self and awareness, to then just go back into the home to, like understand like what's going on.
And how long did you live with your parents before you moved?
So I was back at home for 2 years before I decided to move into my own place.
So let me ask y'all this, because this is something that also comes up. The sibling and extended family dynamic, because usually what you see is there's one person that winds up being the caregiver from the family. That's inevitably how it happens. Sometimes sometimes families have shifts in that, but that is like the exception, not the rule. How did it come for you two to be the caregivers in your family? Was that like a conversation? Was it just by default? Like, how did that come about?
It was really interesting. Like I said, we were all together. So it's just my sister and I. And she had an opportunity to apply for a job out of state. And she didn't want to apply because of my parents. And so I had to have a really good, like, looky here. No, like your success, your career, I go back to, we are in our working years. We have to think about ourselves financially, professionally. And I said, you're going to apply. No, you are going to apply. And she was so nervous about leaving me. And I was like, we'll figure it out. So it wasn't just on me. But we've also talked about, if I see opportunities, that I will take professional opportunities as well. So I told her, I'm not hindering myself. If I see an opportunity, I will take it as well, because I need to keep progressing professionally. For me, that was really lucky, because my sister didn't want to do it. And then what we've done is we've been able to divide up a lot of work. A lot of work sometimes needs to be done virtually, right? Like scheduling of appointments, following up with things. I'm very lucky because my sister is a little emotional. So she isn't always the best to handle like the conversations with the patients, the calmness, but I'm a little scatterbrained. So she's better with like documents and like that part of it. So we've been able to divide the responsibility, even though she's not physically there. And then we also do, like, my sister's taking my parents to the Whispers next week. So they'll be out of the house. She'll take them. So we do that. And, this is going to be live. So the long plan is for us to do more of a 50-50 type situation. That is the 2-year plan would be for them to be somewhere else and to move back and forth. But siblings can be difficult. But I would say what we have had struggle with, and so anyone listening, is outside family and their opinions. People love to give you opinions about what you should be doing in your home. People love to give opinions to my parents. I'm gonna give you one example. My male cousins told my father, he doesn't have a lot of hair and he wears it like in a baldy, that he doesn't need to go to the barbershop, that he doesn't need to give money to the barbershop. Excuse me, please don't worry about what we have going on over here, okay? Because it's not safe for him to be cutting his hair. It is a space, it's a male space that he gets to go to because he's in a house filled with lots of, women, right? So it's time out of the house. It's an activity to get him out of the house to do something. Yeah. I recognize they were thinking the $20 that it costs to get a haircut and saving it, but so that's just one example. But people outside of your home like to give you examples that sometimes them saying that has taken us on almost a 7-month journey to convince him he should not cut his hair. I had to drag him to the barbershop last week. And so them just saying that one thing to him has set us back in what we had set up. And so that's why it's really important. If you're not in the house, if you want to say something, you can say something to the caretaker, but you shouldn't be saying anything to the elderly people. And keep in mind, it's your opinion. Yeah. And you have to trust that they know what's happening in their home.
That's a really good example on a 7-month journey. And I'm sure they would not even have any idea what they have sparked with that. Like I'm sure have no idea.
Right. And he cuts that the ear, and there's blood, and then we have to get a Band-Aid, and
we don't need those problems.
We don't need that when he can just go to the barbershop, which once again is a space. My dad's very jovial. Olivia knows he's very jovial. We're very lucky. He still is chatty. I mean, he's gonna repeat himself, but he's very outgoing. And those are spaces he needs to be in. That gives him good energy. That makes our days better when he has his barbershop. Right.
Maya, what about you?
I feel like it's been a little bit more challenging on my end. I have a sister who does live here, but right now she has her own life thing that she's over and combating. So she hasn't been in any assistance. So it's a lot to take in the responsibility of knowing that when you could have help, that it's not here, and it would, you would think it would be beneficial. But then sometimes the dynamic of what the help is offered isn't always like the help that you actually need. So trying to find the balance. I think it's just taken a lot to just be like, I'm grateful to have the parents that I have, and I'm grateful to be able to have the relationship I have where I don't feel like, there is no other way I would be like, I don't care, they'll be fine, they'll do whatever they want. So I'm here to take on the responsibility of it, but it is very challenging knowing that, sometimes you hear, a sibling talk about, we're planning a trip to go somewhere. I'm just like, oh, that must be so nice and so fun to like just be like still your own life and not the ask. I feel like because I'm here, I'm just still default to be asked to do everything. And sometimes I have to just be like, hey mom, you can call my other sister sometimes, she's not here, but if you want something and I just can't answer the phone, you have somebody else that you can rely on. So I've had to have some conversations and just kind of, understand the position that I am, and then just take it as it is and just know I'm just still doing the best that I can and trying to make sure everybody's safe and healthy at the end of the day, including myself.
Yes.
So it's a big thing to take on, but this is, like you said, sometimes it falls on somebody, and somebody who is there. I'm here, I can answer doctor questions. I know the most about both of their medical cases, so it makes sense.
Was it difficult for you or for your family members to accept the diagnoses and what that meant as far as the change in their life and then your lives? How was like that emotionally accepting, okay, this is what the diagnosis is, and this is what that means?
With my dad, when he was diagnosed, I think you see the signs and you see the changes that are happening. So we were pretty sure that is what it was going to be. However, the doctor kind of just said it, and then like there wasn't any like care and compassion that came with it. It was very interesting. Yes. And sometimes, and especially with his, I feel like most of the time we hear a lot of things about what neurologists do, since this is like a disease that there's really not too much research about. It's kind of like a very trial and error kind of thing that you try something and see if it works or not. And so I think that was like the biggest thing, to feel like we had been given something with a label and still with no instruction on like how to manage it and like what we should be starting to do or what we could be looking at and those kind of things. Again, with him, at the beginning, it was very just like, at that same time, they had taken away his driving abilities. So he was just like, so you're going to tell me I have something, and then you're going to immediately tell me that I can't drive. You didn't do the DMV. You didn't do any of that. So like, who are you to tell me? So we had to go through that phase. And like somebody came over the other day and they're like, that car that's sitting in your driveway. I'm just like, please don't bring up that car, because that's going to take us down a whole nother road. So I think it was feeling like I knew something, but I didn't know what would come next. So it's just like a trial and error and learning like what would be needed to help us. What are the resources? How do I do this? What stages? And then, like I said, we now know what type of vascular dementia he has. We know really like within this earlier this year, like what's the real cause of these arrhythmias that are causing the strokes and things to look out for. So it's been a very long battle with trying to get the right information at the right time. That has made it a little bit more challenging, but again, I feel like that's probably the case with everybody who is going through this issue with this disease.
Our diagnosis was handled with such care. And so it's so unfortunate to hear that someone didn't have that experience. I'm going to call my sister the disease whisperer, because Because I was just like, Dad's old. So this was
Uh-huh.
during the pandemic and we were quarantined together. And she was like, no, something's off. I'm
Mhm.
calling her the disease whisperer because she also knew something was off with me when I was diagnosed with thyroid disease.
Mm.
So like, this is the second time she's just like, no, something's off. This
Yeah.
isn't right. So Dad went for extensive testing. He was there for 2 days. We also did sleep studies and things. But the meeting we had, they said we want to meet with all of us. We were all, it was on Zoom, but she was just the care she took to just go over like all the results. And I mean, it was like a 2-hour meeting. And
Wow.
it was, the care was amazing. Like she went over everything with him and we were like, and it was good the way he was like at the computer and we were over here because we were making faces, but he didn't really see our faces because we were getting where she was going. And like you said, I think we knew, right? Once my sister started mentioning things, I was like, yeah, that's true. Right. Yeah, that does seem off. But the care she took, and she ended with the he can't drive anymore.
Mhm.
Um, which that's where we were most nervous, but the way she said it, and one thing that really resonated with me, she said, if you worked in, because she knew she had talked to him, she's like, you worked in education and you have a love for children, and if you hurt a child, that would be terrible for you. And he's like, yeah, I don't want to hurt a child. And she was like, so, and you told me you commuted. So she knew him, like, you commuted an hour each way to work. You've driven enough in your life, because we thought that was going to be the one, but just the way she set it up, that was because after, we were like, was he just being polite, on camera?
Yeah.
But even after, I think the way she set it up, he was just like, I've driven enough. Y'all can drive me around. And we were like, we were all
Oh,
so
that
like, we
was
were so
good.
happy because that was what we thought was going to be one of the hardest ones. And he did seem to have a decent understanding of what the guys know. Like he was able to repeat a few things and fully understand. Now there was weeks after where he would mention, I just didn't know the numbers on the clock. And then they told me. So
Oh,
yeah, and that's one thing you have to remember, right? Like in the immediacy, he understood it, the complexities of it. But then there'd be moments where we would mention it, and it was, I think for him, it was coming to terms with it. I don't know about your family, Maya, but like in our family, my dad has 13 siblings. I'm gonna get it wrong, but I want to say like 6 of his siblings have Alzheimer's. I think it's 6, it might be 7.
really?
Yeah, so which apparently is becoming more and more common
Mhm.
that multiple siblings will have it. But there's different stages that he sees. And so we're like, yeah, Dad, you're doing better than this person. But unfortunately, we one of his brothers just passed away, but his brother had it. And we were like, Dad, that's a possibility. And he asked questions about, well, how did they pass and how does that happen? I think that's one of his biggest fears is, like how does the end happen? But I think that's a fear, even if you
That's
don't have to
across the
see.
board.
Right.
Mhm.
Like what is this going to look like? And is this going to be pain? I think, is this going to be painful? My dad's a God-fearing man. So I think that he leans on his faith in that moment. But for us, it was similar, Maya. Yeah, we had the signs, but I was really happy at how they did it. Now I will say though, and you mentioned, what do you do after? I don't
Mhm.
think that hat was great. And I know it's because they're like, you gotta handle this. But what you do after and continually to find out like what care exists, what services are there, that part I think is one of the most complex parts in this entire thing. Yeah.
So how did you navigate that part? Like, how did you find resources and figure out what to do next and navigate that with your parents?
So in the case of my dad, he was a veteran. So we were able to use veteran assistance and they kind of gave us what we had options as far as like helping manage his care, what medicines that we could get covered over there versus medicines that we couldn't get through his traditional healthcare plan. So the VA has been the biggest resource for us to allow us to see what we do have as far as coverage. Um, but I think like the healthcare industry in whole is not sufficient for like as it could be. Like it's a big thing for even my mom to be like, did I talk to this person or is this person supposed to call me back? Is this coming through the mail or am I supposed to send something in? They do not make this process to be efficient at all for anybody. So I think that was like the biggest obstacle, learning like, how to reach out. I log into this portal and then I send this email. I do telehealth with this doctor, and then they rely it. I think it's getting a chord on the same page of which doctors are most efficient, who actually responds in timely manners and fashions versus who you're going to have to wait on. We've had his primary care physician. She's been a really good resource, and she's been with him throughout this whole process. So it was asking questions as soon as I knew that I had them was my biggest thing, between me and my mom trying to figure out, like, does this actually work? At the end of the year, some things we can catch up on before we get hit with the new year, and like things that are changing and things like that. So it's again, unfortunately, they just kind of throw you out there to sink or swim, and you have to figure out how to manage it the best way possible. But yeah, that has been a very good resource for us.
We all echo the healthcare system. There's a lot of problems within it. I'm very lucky because we're in the Durham area, so we're in a large research medical area.
Yes.
With also, and I'm going to add this because we're talking about Black, with a lot of Black medical professionals. I've had, and this is just an aside to this, we have struggled a little bit with non-Black medical professionals not being as concerned about my father. I don't want to say like, I think their perception of elderly Black men is not what my father looks like. And I honestly think a lot of non-Black medical professionals see themselves in my dad. Like I said, he's jovial, he's funny. I always like to say he dresses like a high school basketball coach. That's how he enters spaces, tall, slim Black man. Y'all know we don't age like that. So like, they don't usually think he's in his 70s. Most people think he's in his 60s. So they're just not as heightened concerned as I want them to be. And I think a lot of them see themselves in him, right? And they're just like, he's not that old. I'm like, no, these are problems. So we have found but we are in a good area. So we have them in a good healthcare system, which helps as far as sharing documents and keeping them on top of everything. Honestly, if we weren't in such a good system, I think it would be much harder. We also have a great primary care. My parents do geriatric appointments. It's funny you mentioned military because everyone always asks us if he's a veteran. He is not. Clearly that is the way to get the good medical care. Because everyone's like, oh man, they're like, are you sure? Vietnam? I was like, he was alive. He was not drafted. My dad loves to tell that story. He took the bus, everyone got drafted, but him and one other guy. And so, because he was in college over here getting a degree and whatever. So he didn't get drafted, but not being military at his age impacts greatly. I'd say some really good things I found that I didn't even know exist. An insurance broker. So that's someone who can look at, and you don't have to pay them. The insurance companies pay them, and they look at what you need and they help you figure out the best insurance. He luckily carried insurance professionally, but figuring all that out. I've attended events. I just got to attend a great event. Duke Healthcare System hosted it, but it was a caregiver event. They had over 100 vendors. So they had like legal firms, but they also had caregiving, respite care. They have funeral homes too. But I mean, let's just everybody. They had medical devices. So I was able to talk to someone because his dad has a CPAP, and I was able to go to the table and talk to them about like the hoses not working, and they were able to walk me through and give me new hoses. Right. So they do this every year. They also had the cutest elderly cheerleading team perform. They were adorable. They were so cute. I was like, I don't think they want me to call them cute, but they were so cute.
I have no words.
They were so good, little pom-poms. They were so cute. But it was a great event. It also was such a good space to be in with other caregivers. And hearing stories, right? There were definitely other spouses, but there were definitely other children, and like hearing people like their parents throw their medicine at them. I was like, oh, we're not there yet, right? And so like as bad as it can be some days, and I hate to say that, but when you hear other stories and you're like, we're all in this, we're all trying to figure it out. But recognizing that there could be so many other things that you have to deal with. But that was really helpful because healthcare system, I have an insane Excel spreadsheet of everyone I spoke with and everyone I've been able to connect with to get those resources that I did not even know about. And a lot are affordable. That's I think, and I mean, affordable is relative depending on your income. However, a lot are, and there are things you can there are grants and there is aid. It reminisces me a lot to like going to college, right? There is resources and there is money, but you have to do a lot of digging.
You
And I
got to
think that's
find
the
it.
biggest issue, that
Yeah.
you have to do all of this digging and there isn't like a centralized location where you can just get all this information.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we know it's about money.
Okay, so our time is it's close to ending, but I want to end. I want to talk about y'all. So 10 years prior, did you see yourself here like 10 years ago? Like, had you considered being a caregiver before it was kind of upon you? Is that something that was even on your radar? We'll say 10 years ago.
No,
Okay.
it was.
Okay. Ciarra, what about you?
No, like 10 years ago, Olivia, I think we were traveling to Dubai. I was not, no,
Right.
ma'am. This was not, no.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Is it lonely? Is it a lonely place to be a caregiver, single, no kids, and be caring for how, like, is there a loneliness that comes with that?
I think, well, you know what? I don't know. Yes, there's loneliness. I'm very lucky. One of my line sisters, her father was older and we were working together when she was caring for her father. So I got to see it. I didn't really understand. Her father had dementia. I didn't really understand it to that capacity, but because I got to see it, I think that helped. Now that I'm in it, and I'm very lucky. Unfortunately, her father's passed, but she's a resource that I can call. So I think that makes it. She sent me a book as soon as he was diagnosed. So she's been such a good resource and just a good support. Because I think at the end of the day, it's support, right? Like you just need support, someone to talk to, and sometimes you just want to complain, and that's okay. And you shouldn't feel bad about saying you're stressed and saying you're tired and saying it's a lot. I do think it would be nice if I had a male partner, in only the sense that, and I don't know if Maya feels the same, being with a male, it can be difficult. And I think some of that masculinity and some of that within our community and just in general, males, they struggle sometimes. So sometimes I'm like, we just need a man to come in here and like talk to me. But yeah, it can be lonely, but I'm very lucky to have resources and support that make it, my sister and my friends, that make it less lonely.
Yeah, to the same thing. I feel like I was in a space where I guess I feel like my dynamic is so different. My parents are significantly older. They had me at older age in life. So I felt like when we first noticed signs, like the first big sign was my dad was backing out the driveway and he hit my car 3 times. And we were like, why? And he was so confused on how he would continually do this. So I would say, like, we saw the signs and we were just kind of like, something is happening. But again, he's a very jovial, like, ha ha, I can't believe I did that. Like, so you see all these things and you're just kind of like, what is happening? And then the same thing, like, I'm just in a space where I'm trying to learn how to process my emotions along as theirs. And I think that's the biggest thing that makes me feel like I know I need the support to like be able to just talk about like what's going on with my day. Cause I know I'm lucky enough again for my schedule. I work for myself, so I can, schedule things accordingly. So I can like go out for a couple hours and come and check on them and stuff like that. So I'm grateful for that. But it would be nice to like just come back home to be with a partner and just be like, whew, tonight getting him in the bed was like not the easiest, thing to go on. So it does get a little bit lonely on that end, but knowing that you do have those friends who you can call on and support just so you can understand. And as far as like with my parents being significantly older than some of my other friends' parents, I'm the first one in my friend group dynamic who is going through this. So it's kind of like I know I'm going to keep talking about this, not trying to like, scare you guys on like what things are coming up. But like, again, these are very important conversations that you need to at least be able to establish that you do need to have with your parents. And again, making them comfortable talking about you and this transition that is going to happen regardless, was the biggest thing that, having them having an eyesight view of like what is actually going on. But the day that hopefully I find a partner who come home and take some of the stress away from me is coming soon.
Yes, I'm claiming that. I'm claiming that. What are things that you do to care for yourself? What are the things in your life that bring you joy? What are the things that you do kind of outside of your parents? Because caregiving is like one of the things you do. It's not the totality of kind of who you are. So, how do you separate that? And what are some of the things you do to kind of stay balanced, mind, body, and spirit?
So I get out the house. I get out of the house, and seriously, like tonight, I'm going to a friend's house. She was like, "Oh, it's such a fall night." She's like, "Do you want to do fire and drinks? Say less. I will be there." Yes.
Yeah.
And so just for a little bit of time, last night actually, I painted pumpkins. So when I say I volunteer in 2 organizations, and so I've luckily been able to meet a lot of single friends, which is helpful. My friends with kids are lovely, and I do things with them, but my single friends are lovely as well. We can get brunch. I'm going to watch the game Sunday with someone. So for me, since I'm in the house with them, it's sometimes just getting away just for a few hours, talking about anything but their health and their things, because that sometimes involves your whole day. Like right now when we get off, I have to do a few things for them, getting ready for next week, right? And so just time with friends, times out the house, traveling, I find that that's helpful.
What about you, Maya?
Yeah, same. I feel like my biggest thing when I like saw how my life was about to shift dramatically, I was in a work environment that was just like too stressful and too toxic. So I was just kind of like, you can't do it all. So I was grateful enough to be able to step away and just like start working for myself. And with my photography, it's also been able to help me document this transition for him, which I'm very grateful for. And so I believe like spending time with the people who I come across and just like seeing other people and their stories and their lives and journeys, that definitely does bring me joy. But I love going to yoga. That definitely does help me stay grounded. I do have friends to be like, hey, let's do a happy hour, those kind of things. Get to go, like luckily Festival City that I live in, there's always something popping. So I'm just like, I might not be able to go long, or I know I might have to like pick something up on the way there for them or those kind of things. But knowing that I'm catering to myself just to have time just for myself, where I don't have to like feel like I'm constantly accessible to them all the time. I think that's the biggest step I had to learn to make, it's still your life, you're still young, you're still doing the things that you need.
Yes.
That way you can assist them too.
Last question. What is the best piece of advice that you would give for someone that has aging parents that maybe haven't entered the space that you guys are in, or maybe that's at the beginning of maybe a diagnosis or at the beginning of being a caregiver? What is the best advice that you would give that person?
There's so much good advice to give. So I'm just gonna do 2 pieces of advice. What I tell a lot of my friends is just start talking to your parents openly now. If you're not in it earlier, and I tell them, use me. Go, oh yeah, Ciarra has to do this. Like start talking to your parents. What does that look like? What is there? My mom probated wills, so we've been talking about wills since I was a child. Most people don't have homes like that, but so let's talk about living wills. Let's talk about power of attorney. Let's talk about who are all your doctors, because getting that information if you try to get it too late, it's too late, right? So getting all that information is just so important to have, and having open communication about what that looks like, and being a little selfish, going, I have all these things going on in my life, so I need this, and that's okay to like, because they're going to push back. So you have to just go, I have a lot going on in my life. I need to like handle this. I know there's some books online too, like that you can get that you can fill in and it'll have like the things you need to fill in. And then the other thing to go, you're not alone. I think that's the most important thing. Like your parents are going to age. It's such a blessing for aging, right? And to spend all that quality time with your parents, do all those awesome things. Spend the time, they can be annoying, but spend all the time, all the great time, cherish it all. And know that you're not alone. It's something you can share with everyone. Almost everyone has experienced this.
Those are good.
Yeah, I think the same. I would say as soon as make sure you know who you can label who your community of support is going to be. Make sure that you keep them aware of just what's going on and to let them be an aid to you, even if it's just for you to vent and for them to listen. Um, Allow yourself grace throughout this whole process. It's going to be so much change. It's going to be a lot of things that you think you should already have the answer to 2 months ago, but you kind of just don't, and you're just there still figuring things out. So again, take it day by day. Take the gratitude that you still have the opportunity to be with your parents and and see them throughout this process and things like that. So find your home, make sure that you have a good support system behind you, and look for those resources that can make sure that they aid you in the best way possible.
Those are great. And we will leave it there. Thank you, ladies. Like this was such a good, we may need a part two. I don't know. But this was such a good conversation. I know these are conversations that people are having in their friend groups. I get texts all the time from my friends. Like, I tried to ask my mom about her will, and she said it was none of my business. Like, what am I so like all of those things? And so I just want us to do more sharing so that we don't feel alone, because a lot of us are going through this. So thank you guys so much for being willing to share. I know that's not easy. And for all the people that listen, as you know, we love to have feedback. So if you want to hear more episodes like this, real life examples of what people with aging parents are dealing with, please let us know. If you have questions, please let us know that as well. As always, you can always reach us on social media. And with that, I will talk to you next time. Bye.